I'm Zeke.
And I'm Will.
This is Lydia, and I'm here to share about the Better Way trip 2026 to Alabama. So, we started off the week on Saturday by meeting at Epworth Forest Conference Center. That night, we did worship and we met our small groups for the week. And we researched a little bit about what we would be visiting later in the week, so we had some good background information. We also met the other kids that were coming on the trip and our adults that were coming on the trip. And we had a very special chaperone this year. Bishop Malone came with us, and she was with us from Saturday to Tuesday. Once we got to Alabama, we visited Old Ship AME Church. Our tour concierge was Joseph Trimble, whose name might sound familiar if you know Bishop Trimble, and he was very knowledgeable and he was very fun to be around. So he took us to a few really cool places. One of those was an art gallery on the west side of Montgomery. What the founder of the art gallery found when he put up this mural, it became a place for gathering, and it became a studio and a bookshop, and they're working on developing it more.
He had a large collection in one of the front rooms, and then he showed us the area in the back where the artists can do their work, and he told us a little bit more about his philosophy and why he has done things like this. He does this because he believes in the power of activism through art, which Joseph Trimble called artivism.
Monday morning, we were on Centennial Hill, which was a very prominent middle class black neighborhood, and there's a famous picture there of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. linking arms with other marchers, and a common misconception is that that was taken during the Selma to Montgomery March. They were marching to Frank Johnson, who declared bus segregation unconstitutional. Selma and Montgomery, Alabama are about a 45-minute drive apart, and it took them 5 days to walk from Selma to Montgomery. And right there, you see the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was at the beginning of the walk, and they ended at the Alabama State Capitol, where Dr. King stood on the bed of a truck because black people weren't allowed to stand on the steps of the Capitol. And he used a podium that he got from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church.
Here we visited a museum that was built on one of the campsites where the people stopped on their walk from Selma to Montgomery.
There were a few parts of the museum that I thought were really cool. They had statues of some people as if they were walking on the march, and some footsteps too. There were really small footsteps, so you can see I kind of tried to compare the size of my footsteps as an 18-year-old to the size of the children who are participating in what was a dangerous march. There was also a tent of what the tent cities might have looked like. It was like a military style tent that often housed like one or two families or more because they lost their housing for voting. At this time, the civil rights movement was really focused on voting rights for black people. And there was a drawer with toys in it. So, me and one of the other people on this trip were talking about how we probably would have used the flute in it because we're both musicians, and how music is a universal language.
We visited the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which is one of the bridges where they crossed during their 5 day march. And it's also where Bloody Sunday happened. And that's where, once they crossed the bridge, state officers and other police officers massacred them as they were trying to walk across.
They were walking from Selma to Montgomery to gain voting rights. The main reason that the state troopers waited until the other side of the bridge was because the governor of Selma told his officers to stand down because he didn't want to get involved in it.
While we were walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, one thing that stood out to me was how large the river is. I don't think the pictures of the march and Bloody Sunday fully do the bridge justice to just how wide the Alabama River is right here. It kind of puts into perspective how a 5 day walk would have been if this one bridge felt that long. After you get to the end of the bridge, there's a memorial spot, and one of the parts of it that I saw that I thought was really nice was the tomb of the unknown slave, and the unknown soldier.
These statues were made for the three women who had 37 surgeries done on them with no anesthesia.
Their names were Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy.
Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy were three enslaved women from plantations in and around Montgomery, and Dr. J. Marion Sims in the 1840s experimented on them without anesthesia or their consent, despite it not being the same as it is today. But there were still means of anesthesia that were not used at all. And Dr. J. Marion Sims, although he developed the gynecological methods in very cruel ways, he became known as the father of gynecology and became famous. And so the names of Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy were never actually documented either, and historians had to go through lots of Dr. Sims' journals to gather this information. And so this monument was put up to honor them and the pain that they went through. And it also reflects the lack of understanding for Black people and women's pain that still exists in the medical world. Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy are also now recognized as the mothers of gynecology. We also visited the Harris house. So this was the home of Dr. Richard Harris, who was a pharmacist
And a Tuskegee Airman and a librarian.
who was instrumental in the Montgomery bus boycott and the civil rights movement because his house was used as a safe house. And so there were also no pictures allowed in Dr. Harris's house. The reason that no photos were allowed in the house is because Dr. Harris's granddaughter still lives there with her family, and the family didn't actually start doing tours of this house until 3 years ago. So we were very lucky to get to see the inside of this house and all of the letters and photos that they had kept over the years. It was a very large house. The tour was led by his daughter, which was very cool, and she told us about how when the Freedom Riders needed a place to stay, the pharmacy was under renovations. So the counter and the stools and the stove were already in the house. So it was really perfect to have large meetings like this. And it was a large enough house. They also had a large room upstairs that fit all these people in it. So it was the perfect place. And she talked about growing up around Dr. King and several other movers and very important people in the civil rights movement, and how they were really just normal people to her. And she talked about the ways that she also helped in the civil rights movement. And when she was a little kid, it was handing out flyers. One funny anecdote that she shared was whenever people would ask what she thought when the Freedom Riders came, they were college students, and she was a teenage girl, and so she was very excited to be hosting all these cute college boys in her house.
Also, William became Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he stood next to a fridge, and he's a lot taller. The place that we ate at on this night was the Odessa's house. It was just the two of them. There was the wife Odessa and the husband Odessa, and the wife is the one who made all the food, and the husband is the one who set it out and ran things. And it was a buffet of sorts, but it was all their homemade cooking, and everybody seemed to really enjoy it.
On this night, like every other night that week, me, Lydia, Gabe played with Mike.
And that night, Mike preached, and he pulled a pulpit out of nowhere. That night, I played two card games. One was called That's Not a Hat, and one is called Monikers. And last year, we did Monikers, and William really enjoyed it. He can tell you all about it. And this year, we did again, but before that, we played That's Not a Hat, and it's a game where you have to memorize a bunch of your and other people's cards, and then make them believe if your card is what you really say it is. It was at the beginning of Tuesday morning that Marty became the riddle master and asked us riddles to get us ready for the day. Start of Tuesday morning, we visited the 16th Street Baptist Church, where there was a bombing that killed 4 girls and left one severely injured and partially blinded for the rest of her life.
A few years ago, I went with Celebrate Diversity Club and also Laura O'Shaughnessy, and we saw the surviving girl, Sarah Collins Rudolph, speak live at Southside High School in Fort Wayne and share some of her story.
They took us around the church and they told us more about their stained glass windows and organ pipes, and a little bit more about just the history of the church and how things went down that day. And then they showed us what all was original and what all had to be replaced, and also we got to see where the bomb went off. This was the Negro Baseball Museum, and it told about the history of black players in sports, but more specifically in baseball. They talked about significant players, like the first black woman to play baseball, and the 3 different leagues that they had. At the end, we did a little exercise, and the guy explained how baseball is a sport of failure, and also you can see Joseph Tremble throwing the ball. Since most of the time people fail, it gets really exciting when they don't, and even our, quote, big hitters struck out. So this was the children's walk, and they had to do it because if their parents protested, they would get fired from their jobs and they wouldn't be able to support their families. And so we walked through one of the parks that they did, and there was a monument here that had dogs where Joseph helped us understand what it was like, even though the dogs weren't coming at us, because when we walked through, he went "Arr, arr, 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 arr," and scared a lot of people, even though we weren't actually in danger, unlike them. At the end of the day, we visited and toured Huntingdon College, and Obi-Wan Kenobi went there.
He didn't actually go to school there, they just shot a movie.
This is Joseph Tremble's wife. She is the poet laureate for the state of Alabama, and she went to Huntingdon College.
While we were at Huntingdon College, it was the bishop's last night with us, and so she gave a sermon and we had communion.
At the end of the night, we laid hands for the bishop and prayed for her.
Out in front of our hotel, where we were staying, there was a statue of country artist Hank Williams Sr. And then shortly after that, we went on a boat ride down part of the Alabama River. We were showing a section of the path that slaves would have taken going from the train station to the sail point.
The main sail point was later replaced with a fountain to try and erase that part of history. So this place was the Freedom Monument Sculpture Park. So it started kind of with slavery and moved on. There was one called the Hanging Tree, where it was a tree hanging upside down with all of its roots chopped off. And the tree itself was kind of unkept. And at the end, there was also a wall of names. So after they gained freedom, they were able to choose their own last name. And so it had a list of like all of the names that they picked, and the most common to least common, and you could find your own.
Then to end off our day, we went to Maxwell Air Force Base, which is both an active duty military base and a university where they train chaplains and I think some officers.
This is a B-52 bomber. William tried flying one of the planes, but it didn't work because they had removed all of the fuel. This is the chapel. There in the back you can see the stained glass window, and that's where we had worship, where Marty preached about her grandfather being part of the KKK and how she had to change the namesake. And later that night, we laid hands on Marty and prayed for her.
My small group leaders were Brittany and Jane, and Brittany's one of the directors. I've known her for a few years at this point, and she's very cool. But I had not really connected with Jane before. Jane is the Associate Director of Diversity and Belonging for the Indiana Conference. Part of Jane's job is to do trainings over racial awareness and similar topics.
In the mornings when we dueled with the Riddle Master, our group normally won because we're smarter than everybody else.
Probably the smartest group, but we also could have just been the ones that woke up the fastest.
Our concierge Joseph also led us to a very cute little local bookshop, and that's me and Layla browsing. And I ended up getting Beloved, and I also ordered Dr. Trimble, who is Joseph's wife. She is a poet, and she's the poet laureate for the state of Alabama. And I ordered her first book.
This was the Freedom Rides Museum. We weren't able to go inside because of time, but Joseph Trimble gave us a rundown of what the Freedom Rides were and important people, and then at the end he gave us a quiz to see if any of us could name who the youngest Freedom Rider was and how old they were. The Freedom Rides were when people took the buses all the way from the north to the south to try and gain awareness and also rights and end racism on the bus lines.
Hezekiah Watkins was the youngest kid on the Freedom Rides. He went when he was 13, and his mom did not know. He kind of just went. And so he was arrested for a week, and then they found out how old he was, and they let him out of prison. And then he said that he was less scared of being arrested and more scared of what his mom was going to do when she found out that he ran away to join the Freedom Riders.
The story of Emmett Till is that one day he left home to go visit family in the South, but he was never able to return home because he wasn't just killed and thrown into a river. He was tortured for hours, and then his body was desecrated and thrown into a river. When his body was found and they had his funeral, his mother chose to have an open casket funeral so everybody could see what had happened to her son, and that started a wave of people fighting back against racism and advocating for themselves and others.
He was from Chicago, and one of the famous things that his mom said about him was that when he whistled at a white woman, he didn't know to expect the cruelty that he would face because all he had ever known was love. Part of the exhibit at the museum was a video about Emmett Till, and John Lewis, who was a big activist for black rights, he was featured in the video, and one of the things that he said was that Emmett Till was like his George Floyd. The death of Emmett Till really awoke a lot of people to the cruelty that was happening and helped kickstart the movement.
At the place where his body was found, there was a memorial sign put up telling his story, but it has had to been replaced 3 times because people kept shooting it, and it now stands completely bulletproof.
This is the house that Dr. Martin Luther King lived in when he was preaching at the Baptist Church in Montgomery, which we went inside and toured.
The pastor before Dr. King at Dexter Avenue was known for being a big advocate of black rights and would only buy black owned and made products to the extent that if there was no black person that made shoelaces, then he would wear his shoes without shoelaces. So the church actually wanted a younger pastor who wouldn't be so outspoken, and they got Dr. King, who was 25 years old and freshly married to Coretta. And that is kind of funny because he ended up becoming the face of the civil rights movement. All of the ceilings and doorways were pretty short. In a lot of pictures, Dr. King looks like a very tall man, like you might think he's 6 foot or taller, but he was actually 5'7".
Coretta Scott King wanted to be a performer and musician, and she was very well trained in it, but once Martin Luther King Jr. took up being one of the heads of the civil rights movement, she had to stop and support him. But during a lot of events, she would perform and be the entertainer and sing up on stage.
One of the volunteers from Dexter Avenue that was guiding us around the church shared, women members of the church organized prior to when the bus boycott started in 1955. In 1946, Mary Fairburks organized black women in the Women's Political Council, and they met with the mayor and the bus company prior to 1955, and in writing they asked for more bus routes, more black drivers, and other aspects of equality. They wrote follow-up thank yous after the meetings, and in those letters they included all of their asks, and they warned that they would boycott if their needs were not met. So in some records, it says that in the meetings for the Montgomery bus boycott, there were 55 men and no women, and our tour guide could not believe that, and she named several very important women to the church that were also very important in the movement.
One of the last places we went on our trip was a lynching museum, and lynching is a collective mass murder by a mob, which no due process outside of the legal system.
They had stones with the names of everybody in which county and in which state they were lynched. Walking in, you could see there was an overwhelming amount of not just names but stones, and if you looked on the stones, some of them would have over 30 people. In one county in Kentucky, there was 26 people killed on the same day.
Me and a couple others that I was walking with saw a couple from Illinois that had 78 people killed on the same day, none of which having a name listed with them. In the museum, there were 3 different stones for the state of Indiana, 2 of them for specific counties, one of which is Grant County.
I used to live in Grant County. So shortly after we went to the Emma Hill Museum, we saw the Rosa Parks statue in the center of Montgomery where she was arrested. And I asked Joseph Tremble if her statue had ever been desecrated, and he said no. And then he told me it's because oftentimes people come and visit this statue, and so the homeless people in the area give them the story of Rosa Parks and tell them more about the statue so that they can get tips. And so they also tend to protect the statue while they do it.
Our last night was Thursday night, and that night for worship, it was all emerging leaders led. So Griffin Miller shared a message, and I led the music. We had a large amount of musicians. We anointed each other. We said your name, for example, Lydia. May you live at home as you have lived here. Everyone shared a lot of thank yous for our leaders.
So the bus driver that we had that did the whole time, her name was Marla, and she did a lot of the stuff with us. She was very good, and everybody loves Marla. And at the end of the night, when we did all our thank yous, she had 15 minutes of thank yous from various people who went on the trip.
By the end of the week, everybody was very tired, and although we were all grateful to be there in Alabama the whole week, we were also grateful to be on our way home.
Fun fact, the KKK was founded in Indiana, and you can still kind of tell by remnants of people's communities and a lot of systemic racism. So something that you can do is really look out for that and try and make sure that you're consciously trying to stand up and help the people that need it.
Like you said, trying to physically watch and consciously watch out for systemic racism and try and uproot it and stop it wherever you can.